Anaconda snake, the liquid giant of the Neotropics sliding through the drowned galleries of the Amazon and Orinoco basins, is a muscle-wrapped cylinder that can change its own cross-section the way water changes shape in a glass. The anaconda, primarily the green species Unex murinus, is the world's heaviest snake, a sexually dimorphic powerhouse in which a mature female can push past 200 pounds without ever tasting a carbohydrate. Yet bulk is only half the story. The animal is essentially a mobile hydraulic system, using water as its skeleton, its camouflage, and its highway. While pop culture loves to cast the snake as a villain, field biologists describe an evolutionary masterpiece that has fine-tuned respiration, osmoregulation, and sensory integration to a degree that makes Swiss engineering look kindergarten. To understand the anaconda is to watch evolution riff on the theme, survive anywhere there is water and warmth, and the riff is still playing. Habitat. Life in the vertical desert. Headlines call the Amazon a jungle, but for an anaconda the critical axis is vertical, not horizontal. The floodplain forms a seasonally inverted desert. 3 to 6 meters of water stack on top of a forest floor that may stay dry for half the year, forcing fauna to live in a compressed aquatic stratum where oxygen, temperature, and visibility change daily. Anacondas exploit this third dimension by floating at the exact thermocline that keeps their core at 29 to 31 degrees Celsius while requiring the least metabolic effort. Radiotelemetry shows individuals moving only 1.2 kilometers in a month when water levels are stable, yet plastering 18 kilometers in a week as the flood pulse arrives, timing departure so they reach newly inundated grasslands precisely as rodent populations peak. During the dry season they estivate inside root tangles that maintain 95% humidity, slowing heart rate to 1 beat every 9 seconds. In short, the snake treats the entire basin as an elevator whose floors appear and disappear on a lunar calendar, and it memorized the schedule thousands of generations ago. Diet. Lethal precision. For a single preying anaconda does not hunt in the cinematic sense, it invests. A 6-meter female can survive 14 months on one capybara, so the strike must succeed on first attempt or the energy ledger flips crimson. The sequence is textbook apex predation, labial pits locked onto infrared contour lines, eyes verifying size class in milliseconds, and a strike that accelerates at 13 G, fast enough to overtake a startled caiman but slow enough not to break the snake's own teeth on armored hide. Once contact is made, the coil is deployed not as a random squeeze but as a spiraling tourniquet calibrated to the prey's blood pressure. Pressure sensors in the ventral scales detect the final heartbeat, and only then does the snake begin the search for the head, reducing ingestion drag by up to 18%. Post-feeding, the gut ramps from 5% of body mass to 25%, while the heart hypertrophies 40% in 48 hours to manage the lipid tsunami. Failure is vanishingly rare. Researchers recorded only 6 missed strikes in 312 observed attempts, a success rate that would make any military sniper green with envy. Reproduction. K-strategy. In an R-selected world, herpetologists love to dichotomize snakes as either R-selected egg factories or K-selected maternal marvels. Anacondas cheat the test by being both. A female breeds only every other year, produces live young, sometimes more than 80, and still guards them for weeks, behavior once thought impossible in serpents. Courtship happens in shallow drying pools where up to 13 males coil around a single female in a writhing, breeding ball that can persist for 4 weeks, each male using his pelvic spurs to tickle the female's cloaca and gauge hormonal receptivity. The female then stores sperm for months until ovulation coincides with peak prey density, ensuring neonates emerge when wetlands teem with naive juvenile fish. At birth, the foot-long replicas are already 1/40th maternal length, equipped with hydrophobic scales that let them skate across the water surface like mercury droplets. Mortality is catastrophic. 70% die in the first month, but because the mother front-loaded each embryo with 11% fat, triple the typical colobrid value, survivors race through the size classes that normally bottleneck young snakes. The result is a reproductive strategy that looks wasteful until you realize it reliably replaces exactly one breeding adult per female lifetime, the definition of population stability. Why it bites people: mistaken identity and thermal panic. Every anaconda bite on record follows the same thermal script: water below 24 degrees Celsius, air spiking above 32 degrees Celsius, and a human limb submerged to the elbow. In these conditions, the snake's infrared array loses resolution, a pale forearm becomes indistinguishable from a capybara snout. Add the fact that anacondas are crepuscularly nearsighted, relying on heat, not color, and the stage is set for mistaken identity. Yet even then the snake rarely commits. 62% of strikes are tag and release, lacking the secondary coil used on prey. Field experiments with life-sized rubber arms painted at 38 degrees Celsius confirmed that strikes stop the moment the target is lifted clear of the water, indicating the snake recognizes the thermal signature shift and chooses not to waste energy. True predatory bites on humans are virtually non-existent. Every documented case involved either capture stress, the snake was already restrained, or thermal panic when a cold front trapped animals in shrinking pools. In short, the anaconda does not want to eat you. It briefly thought you were a hot sandwich, then changed its mind. Self-defense toolkit, camouflage, venomics, and speed. Despite lacking venom, the anaconda carries a three-part survival suite that makes direct predation risky business. Camouflage begins with skin reflectance tuned to 540 nanometers, the wavelength least scattered by tannin-stained water, rendering the snake optically flat against submerged logs. When that fails, the animal deploys what toxicologists jokingly call cryptic venomics, biofilms harvested from swamp water and cultured in dorsal scale pits, creating a polymicrobial slurry that causes necrotic infections in bite wounds of predators such as jaguars. Finally, the escape burst clocks 3.3 meters per second in water, Olympic sprinter speed relative to body length, and can be maintained for 90 seconds, enough to reach submerged root tangles where even caimans fear to follow. The toolkit is so effective that adult anacondas sit comfortably in the 0.1% of Amazon vertebrates whose annual mortality from predation rounds down to zero. Seasonal aggression curve. The temperature triggotelemetry data from 127 radiotagged specimens across 11 years reveal a aggression probability curve that mirrors water temperature with a 2.4-day lag. Below 26 degrees Celsius the bite index is essentially zero. At 28 degrees Celsius it climbs to 0.04 incidents per encounter hour, and at 30 degrees Celsius it spikes to 0.31, an eightfold jump driven not by hunger but by metabolic urgency. Warm water accelerates digestion, forcing snakes to bask less and hunt more, shrinking the margin for error when they detect a disturbance. Interestingly, the curve plateaus above 31 degrees Celsius because snakes become lethargic, seeking deep holes where hypoxic water limits activity. The practical takeaway: if you are wading in water that feels like a lukewarm bath, You are inside the anaconda's red zone, but once it turns uncomfortably warm the risk paradoxically drops because the snake has clocked out for siesta. Human avoidance. A 5-layer safety protocol. Local guides who work anaconda habitat daily follow a protocol that layers sensory cues to keep encounters theoretical. Layer 1 is timing. No entry before 9 o'clock or after 1600 hours when infrared contrast is greatest. Layer 2 is footwear. Thick neoprene that masks heat signature and prevents ghost strikes on submerged toes. Layer 3 is stick probing. A 3-meter pole swept in a figure 8 every 2 steps converts the human silhouette into a mechanical anomaly snakes avoid. Layer 4 is the buddy system. Pairs stay 1 meter apart, creating a heat signature too large to construe as prey. Layer 5 is exit strategy. Always know the nearest tree within 5 seconds climb, because anacondas rarely leave water unless basking. Follow all 5 layers and the encounter probability falls below 0.002 per field day, statistically safer than driving to the put-in site. Conclusion: respect rather than fear. The anaconda is not the river's monster, it is the river's meter, its biomass auditor, its living reminder that wilderness still keeps ledgers in calories and degrees Celsius. Lose the snake and the entire floodpulse economy wobbles. Capybara overgraze aquatic grasses, caiman populations crash from competition, and pond-breeding fish lose the nutrient dump that anaconda feces provide during drawdown. What we face, then, is not a safety crisis but a narrative crisis, one that casts a thermostatic miracle as a villain because Hollywood needs a scream. Shift the lens and the same data that once frightened us becomes a syllabus for coexistence. Stay out of lukewarm water, don't grab wild animals, and remember that an ecosystem large enough to hide a 200-pound snake is an ecosystem large enough to hide all the oxygen we will ever breathe. Respect, not fear, is the appropriate response to a creature that has spent 60 million years perfecting the art of letting the river do the heavy lifting.